Hello, this is Colleen with Designs of Value Online Art School, and today we're going to talk about brushes. And brushes are such a personal preference. It's really how you hold your brush, how you were taught to paint to begin with. Did you load up a lot of paint onto your brush, that type of thing. So we're going to go over some of the brushes that I like and use, and some examples of brushes that are good brushes, just that they don't suit me that well. So this is a hake brush. This is a brush that you use to paint your backgrounds with. It'll hold a lot of water, and I don't particularly care for it. I know a lot of people do. I suppose for a large surface this would work out really, really well. But it loses a lot of hair. This one happens to be a nylon. There's some that are stiffer, that are made specifically for watercolor. It's not a brush that I use very often. Now, if I'm going to be doing a background, I'll use a brush like this. It's a little bit softer. I don't get a lot of lines with it when I'm doing a background. So this works out really well for me. That's an option that I enjoy. I love these Edward Sterling brushes. They're stiffer. They don't lose bristles, which I love. This is the larger. I have both. I think there's one more that's even larger yet. But if you watch any of my stuff on YouTube or Patreon, you'll see me use these periodically. So these are the two that I enjoy. And again, I'm using these for a background. I'm a botanical painter mostly. Still lifes, that type of thing. If I were a landscape artist, I would probably be using a different brush, but this one works perfectly for me. And then I've got this. This is a silver brush. Got to look at it really close to see what size. A 3/4. And it's got the pointed tip, which is kind of a unique brush. I'm going to move my other brushes out so you can see it. It's got kind of a pointed tip. I like the silver brushes. They last a long time. They're made very well. The black velvet. But this would be a good background brush too. As far as using them for my regular painting, like botanical painting and that type of thing, I'm going to get this wet and I'm going to show you what I mean. And I'm just going to use my background here as an example. Alright, so I'm putting water on here, I'm putting paint on here, whatever I'm doing. But now I'm going to go ahead and add some more. And I'm going to just dry this out. See how after I dried it, how it bends? So you're forever doing this. Just try and straighten out the tip. That I don't care for. I don't like to get my hands on my brushes when they're wet. Then you got paint on your hands. You're taking a chance you're going to put it onto your surface as you're painting, that type of thing. These are a nice brush, don't get me wrong. Everybody's got a different preference. This is just not the way that I want to paint with my brushes. I do use these. You put water on at times, that type of thing. Now there's a couple different brushes that I do enjoy. Always need a liner or a spotter. So those are a couple of the brushes that you always need, the smaller ones. I don't paint. I watch on YouTube and I see people painting entire projects with those. You really need to have the brush the size of the project you're painting. Now this one happens to be a Princeton round size 8. I'm going to just show you the difference here in sizing. This is a size 6. This is a Billy Scholl brush, who is one of the most fabulous botanical artists you've ever seen in your life. But I want you to compare. Mine's an 8 and hers is a 6. Now she's from England, so she, makes her brushes and so forth to her specifications. But our 6 is her, our 8 is her 6. Just something you might want to be aware of. Fabulous brush that Billy makes. they're expensive. You got to pay to have them shipped over, but I absolutely love them. This is another one. This one is a 2. Now this one would probably match. That's a 6. I should have a 4 out here. Yep, yeah, this one's a 4. See how her 2s and 4s match size-wise? So it's just something you want to be aware of. If you're going to be ordering brushes from another country like that, just be aware that they have different sizes at times. If you're going to be ordering here in the United States, where I'm from, I enjoy the Princeton Velvet Touch. Now this one's a 4 and an 8, and I also have a 6. If you have these brushes, and a number 2 would be nice to have too, because it gives you a nice point. These brushes hold their tip. I don't have to get them pointed out to their tip when I'm done using them. They stay with that tip, so it works out perfectly for me. I'm not forever running wet brushes through my hands, that type of thing. I don't get paint onto my brushes. Now this is just a Master's Touch. I think Hobby Lobby makes them, or it's a brand that they carry, and this one happens to be a size 8. And I use this as my water brush, and what I mean by that is when I'm doing a wet on wet technique in a petal, I am going to use one brush and one brush only. This one happens to be a black handle, and it's the only brush that I use normally with a black handle. So I know that's my water brush. I don't put any paint on it when I'm painting. It's strictly meant for clean water. So that works out really nice. And then there's a couple different types of brushes that you'll need that I would recommend. Now this is just an old acrylic flat number 12 Royal. I use this to mix my paints on my palette. Let me grab my palette so you can see. So when I'm adding water and I'm mixing my paints, I don't want to use my good brown brushes. I don't want to lose the tip on those brushes. So I mix with this. This is nylon bristled. It's got a nice little place to put your hands so that they don't get stiff and sore. Well, it makes a nice brush, but it's an acrylic brush, so it's meant to be used with a heavier paint. Acrylic is heavier than a watercolor, but so it's going to stand up to the watercolor much better, and you're not going to be ruining the tip on your good brushes. And I use an eradicator. An eradicator is a brush that you want to use. This is Billy Scholl's, and she again makes a lovely, lovely brush, and it lasts forever. So say you're painting an apple, and on the outside of the apple, you may have gone over with color. You can use the eradicator just wet to remove that color that you went over, or to, on the inside, just to clean up your line on that apple. So that's, and I have all different sizes of eradicators. Sometimes it's a big surface, sometimes it's a little surface, so you've got many different choices here. In fact, this one seems to work out fairly well for me. It's a little bit softer than I would like, but it's a Master's 1/4 inch brush. And this one, this is actually a nice, it's actually an oil brush, Schwaff size 10, but it is a great eradicator for those larger areas. Now this one too, I actually used it in oils, so it's always going to be stained with that purple color on there, but I don't care. It doesn't come off. But you have, this one is very, very stiff. It's a filbert shaped, which means it's just a rounded flat. They rounded the edges off of the flat and made this filbert. But it's a very stiff brush. You can probably hear it. Where these other ones, yeah, you can't even hear them when you're using them. So you have to be careful with watercolor paper and having such a stiff brush, because it is going to damage your paper if you press way too hard on it, so you have to be cautious with that. A couple other things I have here is just a knife that I use a lot of times if I'm going to be spattering. I can do it this way right over my knife, that type of thing. Sometimes I'll mix with this. A lot of different uses that way. This is a tool that I use to apply masking fluid, and it's actually an oil lifter to lift oil color out if you put it in the wrong spot. And I use it to do the masking fluid. Then you don't ruin a brush. I do use just an old nylon acrylic brush to, if I need to have it more of a point, although this does come to a nice point. So those are some of the brushes that I use and what the purposes are. This series that I'm doing for you right now is one small thing. So this is one small thing when it comes to watercolors, is your brushes. I'll be coming out with some more examples of one small things in classes for you. So I'll see you then. And don't forget, check me out at Patreon. I've got a lot of classes on there that I'm coming out with, and I think you'd be absolutely thrilled to try some of those. See you then.